Hi, everyone, and welcome back to more Confessions of Another Place and Time. So, this is my short story that I wrote about this event in my life back in 1984 85. We're now in 85, and I had just revealed my true identity to Robbie and Charlie, and that, of course, went out to others as well. They didn't keep it to themselves. And I had graduated at that same weekend and also moved on as far as done with school, high school, that is. And I had told Charlie in a last letter that I delivered to him that I did know a girl who was interested in him because he was always asking me about that. If it didn't work out with us, is there other girls? And I'd come back to school because I needed to do a couple things, including drop off a blank VHS tape so that my AV instructor could put the graduation ceremony that I just had on it for me because it had been recorded, and she had agreed to do that. But then I had to go back to pick it up. So last time I said that was the last time. Actually, this was the last time I went. And so when I went, I sat in lunch with Portia and her group again, and I got to see Charlie and Robbie, and the others. And it was quite interesting. Some of the looks, some of the exchanges, just with your eyes kind of thing, especially with Charlie. But I'd asked Charlie in the hallway if he was interested in finding out who this girl was, and if so, to call me. So that's where we left it off, and I was waiting for him to call. Um, he did call at some point, not too long after that, and I was really shocked to find out that he already knew who the girl was. It was my friend Portia, and that he wasn't interested in her. So then I'm thinking, well, then I wonder why he decided to call. I'm glad he called. I was glad to hear from him. But I asked him, well, how did you know? And he said, someone told me, but I'm not interested in her. Uh, I immediately wondered, therefore, why did he call? But I was glad he did because if Charlie hadn't called me, the rest of the story wouldn't be possible. We had to continue communication somehow. And I had his number from when he had given it to me. Now he had my number from me giving it to him in one of those last notes. So when I asked him that, I was sure the conversation wouldn't last more than a few minutes. I thought, oh well, he's just saying, doing what he said, calling me to find out. And somehow he immediately found out. Before that, though, pretty quickly, and I asked him how he knew. He said a guy named Bill Thomas who went to our school told him about this girl that was interested in him. And he added, Charlie, that he's gay too, quote unquote. He sounded, or he said with an interesting sounding voice, and he began to ask me questions about how many gay guys I knew at our school and how well I knew the one that everyone knew was gay because he was pretty open about it, or out without maybe saying it, was a guy named Mark Hooper. And he kept asking questions, I kept answering, and he told me that he would like to find out more about Bill Thomas. Now, remember, Bill was a guy that I had met through Portia. Didn't know for sure he was gay, but we had the impression he was bisexual. That was the rumor around school. And Bill was a nice guy from what I could tell, but he was also just really wanting to get laid, to be honest, somehow, to get some action somehow. And he seemed to be pretty open to who that would be with, as I found out later, just from hanging out around him and having some time with him. Um, so I asked him, why are you so interested in Bill Thomas? I guess that he said he was curious, and that next phrase really surprised me, that he, quote unquote, liked him. I said, you gotta be kidding, meaning I thought he was joking. I really did think Charlie was joking because he so made it clear how interested in women or girls he was in those letters. So I thought he's just saying this to it's a joke. Now he's playing a joke on me, and I thought that would be only fair. But he asked me if I knew Bill Thomas's phone number. I said no, I did not, but that Portia might have it. So he really wanted me to get that phone number, and he said, "Well, do you know Mark Hooper?" Well, No, I really didn't know Mark Hooper at the time. I just knew of him at school. But I had never hung out with him at that point and didn't have any, communication with him. So he wondered if Mark Hooper would have Bill Thomas's phone number. I mean, in his mind, every gay person, which weren't that many we knew about at the time in our school, but there were a few, like Brian that I mentioned earlier, um, that we all had each other's phone number. This secret group of the gay, however many there were. But I told him, no, I don't have either one of their phone numbers. My friend Portia might, because she is friends with Bill and knows him a lot better than I do. And so I said, well, I could try to get it for you. And, I tried to call Portia. He asked me to call her and then call him back. So I'm like, okay. And she wasn't there. So I called Charlie back, but, I didn't have any phone numbers to give him. And I wasn't sure I wanted to anyway, because, keep in mind, I wanted Charlie. I felt like if anyone deserved Charlie, I did, as far as like dating or going in, getting into a relationship, and with all the time we'd spent together in these letters, which obviously wasn't the real me. But when I called him back that time, and it was the same night, same time frame, just shortly thereafter, after I couldn't get a hold of Portia. And remember, back then nobody had, that I know of, call waiting and or caller ID or things like that, so it wasn't as easy to know who was calling. Um, but when I called back, it was the first time I had a chance to talk to him and laugh about the mystery person. I mean, just to be able to answer questions and talk about it, about methods, motives, everything that had gone on between the two of us, because it was pretty intense, I must say. And I know we both enjoyed it. I can speak for myself. Clearly, I enjoyed it. Um, I'd said all along since the mystery person's unveiling that I wanted to discuss it with Robbie and Charlie if they were interested. And at least I was able to start talking to Charlie about it. And for me, talking to him about the whole thing was obviously, it was just enthralling, because it was kind of like two people getting together for the first time after a long separation, or two people who'd been pen pals who finally meet. That's probably a better comparison. We finally were talking to each other as ourselves. I mean, he had always been doing that, but I hadn't. We were much more intimate, however, than the average pen pals, I have a feeling. As the conversation drew to a close, since I had to go to work and he had things he had to do, I had to make a few last sexy comments, which I did. We said goodbye after both laughing, and I just didn't know what to believe. I mean, it was so unbelievable to me that, and I don't know why, looking back, I don't know why it would be unbelievable when he said in that letter he would consider a relationship with a guy, or at least sex with a guy. And then now he's telling me he's interested in a guy, and I'm having trouble believing it's actually true. I think it's just because it seemed like, how could this have actually worked out? And it did. So it was kind of hard to believe. So when I went back to school the last time, the true last time, to get that videotape, I again got to go to the lunch. And Charlie and I had had that conversation very recently. I think it was just a matter of a day or two. And we were really giving each other looks at this point. I mean, we both were laughing too, because we were kind of playing with it. I mean, some really interesting looks. Let's put it that way. So I went up to Charlie in his locker bay again, and I made sure that he had gotten the latest note, but actually he hadn't. So he went rushing to his locker. So actually, we must not have been at his locker right that second. So yeah, he went rushing to his locker to get it. So then I needed to tell Portia the thing about Charlie not being interested in her. I didn't know how she'd feel. I mean, she wasn't that invested in him. She was actually much more interested in, guess who? Bill Thomas. So Bill had Portia interested in him, and now Charlie, supposedly. And I did believe Charlie on that, by the way, because he had no reason to sort of lie about that. And so I told her. She didn't seem too shocked, and she wasn't hurt or anything, which I was glad. But guess what? She knew that it turned out Charlie sent a letter to Bill saying he liked him or was interested in him or something like that. And when I heard that, that confirmed, I guess Charlie's telling the truth. This isn't a joke about Bill Thomas. But it explained a lot. Why was he so interested? Why did he want that number so badly? I knew the feeling, that wanting someone so badly and hoping that they're interested in you. And so that's what Charlie was doing, unfortunately, with Bill. So anyway, it was the thing that allowed me to believe the truth about Charlie and to finally actually hope that we could someday be together. And so we had that conversation. And one of the most ironic things about that, if you think about it, was Portia was very interested in Bill. I, of course, very interested in Charlie. Charlie's interested in Bill. So how could that? What are the chances of that? That my best friend, the guy who I want, is interested in the guy who she wants. I mean, there's a whole school of people, and these. So I just found that very ironic, and so did Portia. But we were just trying to figure out ways how could we kind of, you know, lessen the chance of those two getting together and help ourselves, in this regard. Because we just were like, this can't be happening. But it was. So, I talked to Bill and I talked to Charlie different times. And I tried to get information from each of them. And what I got matched up. I mean, there did seem to be, everything seemed to be confirmed. So um, I was just truly amazed that that was happening. But I wasn't giving up on Charlie, and I wasn't giving up on the chance to have him. So this was during that whole month of June of '85 that this stuff was going on, or maybe late May as well, but into June. And later I called Charlie and I talked about Bill and tried to get information from him. And he did tell me, he kept saying he's interested in Bill. And he basically was asking me for advice on how to get Bill. Now, again, the irony of that is just something else. And, I knew he wasn't a guarantee that we were going to get in a relationship of any kind. So, as much as I liked the guy, I wanted him to be happy. And I decided, help him how I could, but not too much. Um, in other words, give him advice, let him do his thing. But if it didn't work out with Bill, I'd be there as well. Still interested in Charlie. So we went out actually one time, Portia and I, after that, with Bill and a couple other people. And, this is kind of indicative of how he was at the time, and it's not a judgment, it's just how he was, is that Bill was very, again, he just wanted some action. But what was interesting to me is he never seemed to reciprocate the feelings that Charlie had for him. So Bill was interested in this woman and this girl and this person. And it seemed like everybody but Charlie. So there must have been something about Charlie. He liked Charlie as a person, but he didn't seem to want to have a relationship. And I don't know, I have no idea, but from what Charlie told me, that relationship possibility never took off. And so I don't think they did have sex or anything like that, but I could be wrong because I certainly don't know everything about what happened. But one time we were driving around, and I tended to be the driver because I had a vehicle and many of them didn't at that time. Um, and so we had gone out, Bill and several of us, Portia. Charlie wasn't there. We had hoped he could come, but he wasn't able to come. And the last two was Bill and I. And so I took Bill back. He invited me in just to have a little drink and, talk for a little while. And I was wondering if it was going to be a come on. And sure enough, he wanted to get into something more comfortable. He came out of the area he changed in some skimpy shorts, poured us both some drinks, and dimmed the lights. So I wasn't dumb or blind, and I knew what was happening. But I also knew that I wasn't really interested in Bill, and it would kill my friend Portia if I had sex with Bill. So was there a human part of me that was somewhat, into the idea? Yeah, I would be honest and admit that. But there was much more a part of me that wasn't interested in Bill and didn't want to do that to my friend. And I wanted to focus on Charlie. So I didn't do it. He did come on to me. He did basically want to have sex and made it obvious. but it didn't happen. I got up and left after just a short time. So the next time I talked to Charlie, however, I wasn't going to tell him that part because I didn't want to rub it in or anything that, oh, Bill was willing to have sex with me of some sort, but he's not interested in you. That's like rubbing salt in a wound you don't need to do. But we were talking on the phone, Charlie and I, various times, had a lot of enjoyable talks. Some were more than enjoyable, especially for him. Keep in mind, these are young guys with a lot of hormones, and so was I, but I think I was a little bit more in control of my mind maybe than some others. But believe me, they were there. And so he asked me many questions about being gay and my life and how that went. But my aim was to learn about him in the first few weeks, and we did. We asked questions, we answered, especially me, and I wanted to see how deep his feelings actually went for other guys. I wanted to find out, what he liked, what he disliked, etc., what his curiosities were. And he was eager to talk and have someone he could trust. He told me, for instance, that he really wanted to try giving a blowjob. That was pretty direct. He wasn't hiding a lot, in other words. And neither was I. So we had a lot of interesting conversations. Again, I think it was the first time he was able to talk to someone about such things. And I wish Charlie could understand how much I loved him. I don't think he did, at that point especially. And I wished he would feel the same. But, he was a young guy, teenager, and I just don't know if he was even ready where I was. I was just a couple years older, but ready. And at one point I called Bill's, and he said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I don't remember why I called. I have no idea. But he said, "I've got someone for you to say hi to." And the next thing I know, he put Charlie on the phone. So that was pretty shocking that Charlie was over Bill's house. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I gave too much good advice. So that's where I don't know if anything happened between them. But if so, it was like probably a one time thing. So obviously, Charlie was not in a relationship with me. He could do what he wanted, and that was okay. And so could I, honestly. But I chose not to. I just didn't have a lot. I didn't know a lot of guys that were gay that I was interested in. But they invited me to come over. I did. We spent some time together, the three of us, just hanging out for a little bit. And then, I ended up taking Charlie, back to his house. I don't know how he got there. He must have gotten a ride somehow. And Bill went with us just for the ride, which I wish he hadn't. But we took Charlie back. And then on the way home, I tried to get information from Bill about how it was going and things like that. Did he make any progress with Charlie? The thing is, I don't think he was trying to, but I was just trying to find out, was that possible? Bill just didn't seem to want to talk about it, especially on the way back. He was real talkative about his place and while Charlie was there, but then he kind of clammed up. And I was just glad to spend time with Charlie, to be honest. So I would have taken them across town. In the meantime, this was pretty close by. But with Bill just not being willing to talk much, I turned my attention back to Charlie later, and that was easy for me to do. He was my focus, and he was what I was focusing on for my summer break in between high school and college, while of course working, and he was working too, I believe, still. And as I said, he was at the point of trusting me and letting his defenses down most of the time. Yeah, there were times he wasn't very talkative or at ease, but most of the time he was. So, of course, he told me a lot of true feelings, and that wasn't always easy for him, and he was trying to accept all of that about himself and having, a hard time occasionally. Once in a while, I don't know, he kind of went back and forth, and maybe it was depending on the mood he was in. But from everything I knew, Charlie was bisexual. To talk that much about girls and what he wanted to do with girls in letters or them to do to him, and then all this talk now about guys, to me, I just had to assume he was bisexual. I don't think he ever used that word, though, but that's me saying that. I also saw Charlie once when we went on a school trip, some of us to Kings Island Amusement Park in Cincinnati area, and Charlie was at school for driver's ed at the time, um, and I was on the bus. He was outside, so we just waved. But it was always good to see him. And the thing is, this was now the end of June, and we were getting ready to go out for the first time, and together alone. But it happened kind of accidentally in a way because I called him. I decided, you know what, I'm going to invite him to a movie. But he said he couldn't go because he already had plans with someone he knew named Jason, who was also at our school. I didn't know anything about Jason except he was stylishly with a kind of punk rock influences. And Charlie seemed, again, somewhat interested in him, I guess. But I agreed to give Charlie a ride. And he said, well, why would you do that? And I said, well, just I wanted to. I feel like getting out and doing something. And, I might go to the park after I drop you off. So it's not a problem, which is true. It wasn't. But of course, really, I just wanted to spend time with him, even if it was a short time. When you're that interested in someone and you're in love and also in lust, I would add, well, then you're willing to do things like that sometimes. So we agreed. I got there. Charlie came out of his neighborhood on that little motorbike, and we got together on the side of the road, and I helped him load it into the back of my vehicle, and then we went. But he said, I asked him, well, where do we need to go, what direction, etc. He said, oh, well, turned out Jason can't get together. Something else came up. So I don't know if that was just sort of camouflage or something like that. But anyway, he said, I'm willing to go out with you if you still want to. And do I still want to? Of course I still want to. So we were going to have our first date. And, obviously it wasn't planned. But we decided to go to a local park. Holiday Park is the name of the park. And at the time especially, it was a bit of a gay hangout. I mean, there weren't a lot of places besides bars that gay men could go and just hang out. And sometimes they would do more than that. But we were just going to spend some time together. And I certainly didn't expect sex of any kind, and that wasn't on the agenda. But we did stop and get some gas. I had an old 68 Cutlass at the time, which was a nice car, very solid, but not in the best shape. And it was funny, I got out of the car and Charlie said, fill me up, Rand. So I was like, he's finally getting a little playful himself. But it was wonderful, and we had such a good time for the next 2 hours together in that park. And that will be discussed next in the next part of this Confessions of Another Place and Time. I think there's going to be 2 more parts, and that should be it. And again, I hope you're enjoying this story. I'm enjoying sharing it with you all. It's a big leap of faith for me to do that, and I appreciate, like I said, the comments, positive comments, which have only been positive, and people who are interested. I did have one person ask about sort of the unedited, not family-friendly version of this, because believe me, there is one, and I'm not going into a lot of that detail, but I haven't decided if I'd want to do that. But anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time for more confessions. Take care.